Hi everyone. So let's talk about guidelines. And I thought before I'd show you how to do them, I would try my best to explain how to use them and what they provide for you in creating your mandala. I typically use either a 12-point stencil or a 16-point stencil to create mine. You can see on this piece here, it's I picked this piece out because it's sort of easy to see what's going on in it. But this is a 16-point stencil that I'll use to lay the guidelines down. And if you look, you can see that I have 16 spokes in my art. If you were to count out here, you'd have 16, and I apologize for my nails. I really need to deal with those. 16 here, 16 here. So this is a nice simple one, and every row I'm putting on a guideline so that you have 16. This one, you can see, has a little bit more going on to it. This one is a 12. If you lay the stencil over the top, you could see that they line up. And if you were to count out here, there'd be 12. Now, in the center, there's only 6 petals. And that's because to do those, I went every other guideline, which left me here. If I did this on a guideline and this on a guideline, that left me a guideline in the middle to do this design on. So your vertical guide marks will give you your pattern overall. The more guide marks that you have, if you were to do a 16 or a 24 even, your mandala patterns, each pattern would be smaller, and the mandala would look more, I don't want to say busy because that seems negative, but busier. Whereas the smaller, like this one being a 12, you can do bigger patterns because you have more room in between your vertical guidelines. So I think that's not the part that confuses people. I think what confuses people is the circular guidelines. So let me zoom in here. You can see my circular guidelines go across here. And along the way, I then did this petal on this circular guideline. Then for over here on this design, with every brush stroke, so the green one starts up here at the top one. Then for my yellow one, I drop down a line. For my purple one, I drop down another line. For my orange one, I drop down another line. And what that provides me is uniformity throughout. So if I didn't have those circular guidelines, then my brush strokes would probably be different heights from petal to petal. So that makes sure that I'm keeping all of my brush strokes or swoops or dots or whatever it is, the same height. Right here, for example. That blue dot, top blue dot, is right at this guide mark right here. So then every blue dot is at the same one, so that all my petals will be the same height. I think where people get confused is they think that there is supposed to be a magic formula for how many circular guidelines to make. And there's not. The rule, I eyeball mine, but if I measure them, they're about 1/4 inch apart. the more circular guidelines you have, the more chances it is that you'll have one to use when you need it. For example, over here again, if I had had these circles way far apart, then my brush strokes would have been way far apart, or I would have had to eyeball in between guide marks. So the more circular guide marks, just to me, the easier it is. But those maintain height, and the vertical guide marks maintain your spacing horizontally. Okay, so let's make some. This is a board that I started, I was doing practice on, so you can probably see it's got some dots underneath the black paint. So first thing is to find your center. A lot of people swear by one method and other people swear by another method. There's tools you can buy. Hold on, I'll go get my center finder. If your pieces are 12 inches or less, you can get one of these from Amazon. It's just do a search for round plastic center finder, I think, 12 inches. But this has lines on it, which you can see. And you can put your board up and line up your board on those lines, and there's holes you can mark your, I guess you can use this as a compass too, but the holes are not very big. So with a really sharpened pencil, you can mark your, or even a push pin, you can mark your center through that center hole. The other method is to take a piece of like parchment paper or newspaper and lay your piece down, trace around it a circle, then cut that circle out. Then you're gonna fold it in half, and cut the little tip. And that gives you something that looks like this. If you remember from elementary school, we used to do that as kids. That will give you your center. For smaller pieces, that's what I do. This was for a coaster. But you see that now I have a hole in the center that I can mark. But the method that I use the most, and it's kind of a lot of guesswork to it, but it works out, is to, if I know what size board I have, like I know that, actually I don't know what size board this is, let me see. I think it's about a 10. Yeah, this is a 10-inch board. So when I line that ruler up, I'm right on the 10 out here on the right. If I go up, then I'm getting less than 10. If I go down, I'm getting less than 10. So right in the center puts me on the 10. And so then I just mark half of that, which is 5. And then I do that again. I turn the board around, do it again. Turn the board around, do it again, and you'll start to get a collection of dots or marks. And then I just sort of intersect those. So X marks the spot, maybe. Then I take my compass. I'm gonna need to move this phone up. I take my compass and I plant it, the pointy end, right where I marked that center cross. And I extend the compass out to the very edge of the board. So there on the left, and then I swing it around to the right, and it's right at the very edge of the board. So this is how you can check to see if your center is right. And then the top, it's right at the edge of my board. And then the bottom, and it's right at the edge of my board. So that is my center. So I just kind of dig my compass in there a little bit, mark it again, and there's my center. From there, take one of your stencils. I'm not going to do the protractor method because that would be a long video, but if anybody's interested in that because they don't have the stencils, just shoot me a private message and I'll see what I can do to help you. The protractor is not the same as the compass. I notice people get those confused a lot. This is the compass. Protractor is to do your degrees. You have to actually do a little bit of math if you don't have a stencil. These stencils are really cheap. So I'm gonna lay my stencil down on the center there and just make some vertical guide marks. You don't even have to trace the whole thing. You're just making enough that you know where it's gonna be. And there we go. And now you just take a ruler and connect them. Sharpen my pencil. And you should be passing through your center mark with each guideline. If you're not passing through your center mark, you need to readjust. See, your center mark should be in the center where all those lines intersect. That's important. Okay. Uh-oh. From there, so there's our 16 vertical guidelines. And again, remember, I'll use those to line up my patterns, my petals. I can either do every guideline or every other. Normally, I start out in the center doing every guideline to get kind of a smaller pattern in the center. Then I switch it up to every other. And then I'll have some transitional border like I did here. Actually, I started right out with every other guideline. Every other guideline. Then I knew I wanted to convert over to using every guideline because as you move out the board, you have more space, so you can do bigger patterns. If I was to skip every other guideline out here, that would be really big patterns, which is fine to do. It's just what look you're going for. At any rate, once I came out here, if you notice, I landed my green right at this circle, and that set me up to do a transition, a border of sorts, whether it just be rows of dots or these interlocking swoops. And then that set me up to now I can go to every guideline. It gives you a transition, okay? So for your circular marks, I seem to have lost my pencil. There it is. For your circular marks, like I said, I eyeball them. I like to have more than less. So I just start in the center, and the center of using the compass is really difficult. But you don't need it right up against the center usually, depending on your design. I never need it more closer than an inch or so away. Okay? And then you just move the compass out. Now, if you want to measure your circles, then you can take your ruler and go along one of the vertical marks and make a little mark every 1/4 of an inch. So, quarter, 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 quarter. Hard to see. And remember, these don't have to be exact. But if that makes you feel more comfortable, then by all means do that. And then you just simply extend your compass out to that first mark. Compass is tight. Hard to do this with the phone on top. And there goes my pencil. I need to empty this sharpener. Hold on. I'm about to have a sharpener accident. A lot of people struggle using the compass. It really just takes a lot of practice and a good compass. This is the Mr. Pen Extra Large. You want to, where you're planting it, that's where I hold down. I'm at the top of my compass. I'm holding it at the top. And I'm putting the pressure in the center. And then I'm letting the pencil more or less drag along. Would have been easier with a turntable. And if you're doing smaller pieces, I definitely do recommend a turntable. It also gets easier the further out you get with the compass. Got off my center. I love these Stabilo pencils for making guide marks, but they do have to be sharpened an awful lot. But they show up on any surface and they wipe off like a dream. But they don't last long. So there you go. Ta-da. I hope that you find that helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. You know where to find me.